We had the view from the right on the Debbie Wasserman Schultz video. Don't accuse us of not having both sides, because now we're going to hear from our favorite lefty. That is Jonathan Harris. Jonathan, welcome back. Good to have you. All right, so there's little doubt that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was a little tongue-tied on this. And I tried to think, if I were in Debbie's shoes, I mean, you know, I'm media trained, you're media trained. I try to think, what the heck would I say? Right. Because I don't think there's much of a difference anymore. I think the two have sort of melded. Do you dispute that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I understand her position. Sometimes I wonder what the difference is between conservatism and fascism. So, no, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. That was a joke. Okay, thank you. No, I understand.
Size of government is the difference. I mean, I can tell you precisely what the difference is. But what is the difference between, I mean, is it just that, have Democrats, and I'm sorry, I will let you talk, I swear. Have Democrats just... It was
because of that joke, wasn't it?
It was that joke. Shut up, I won't let you talk. Have Democrats just moved so far to the left now that they really are indistinguishable from socialists, but they don't like the name? I mean, it has a bad connotation.
Well, Bernie Sanders doesn't mind it.
Bernie doesn't, and I appreciate his honesty.
Right, which is where the question came from. Bernie Sanders doesn't mind it. I do think there is a difference between socialism and Democrats, which is socialism really advocates for the government controlling, you know, means of production and things like that. That's what that advocates. Democrats don't advocate for that. Democrats advocate for the private sector. They just want it regulated so that it doesn't become irresponsible, like the housing market and so on and so forth. So there is a difference
Traditionally, that was true. I think it's less true today.
Well, I think that's always been the case.
But do you disagree that in the last 20 years, we've taken a big, giant step from the time? I mean, you compare a Kennedy, for example, who was rabidly pro-life. You know, he was for private industry. He was very much a small business-oriented sort of president. And you compare him with a Barack Obama, and there's really no comparison, or even a Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely, but I think in the same way, you could think of like an Abraham Lincoln Republican, or even a Reagan Republican, who granted amnesty, who talked about reigning in government and even gun control. I think both parties have
But you wouldn't say that's a move toward fascism. You'd say that's a move toward centrism, if you were going to say that.
That's just a move towards, I think both parties have kind of gone further to the left and right. Is basically
you feel that they've adapted to their base?
Right, and that was gonna be my next point, which is I think that people have become more polarized, and so I think that our parties, the parties that represent those people, also have become more polarized, moving further away from the center. So I mean, Reagan wouldn't even be a conservative now. He would be considered maybe a conservative Democrat. Compared to what he was back when he was in office. So I think both parties have kind of moved to extremes.
It's interesting you think that, because I think most conservatives really love Reagan, and it's the moderate Republicans that kind of aren't the big Reagan fans.
They do love Reagan, but I think the people who love Reagan don't know about Reagan.
Well, I think our world was different then, too. I mean, you talk about amnesty, then we were talking about, what, a couple thousand people? Now we're talking about millions and millions of people that America can't afford to just absorb.
Well, perhaps,
so
but what he did was he granted amnesty and didn't secure the border. And now if a Democrat had done that, they'd be like, oh, you're just doing it to get the votes from the illegals.
Now, because we're talking about millions of people, but then we weren't talking about millions of people. So I think it was just, and I do understand your point is, I think, and we probably agree on this, which is always frightening, that both parties have moved toward the events of the day and to where their base has gone. But some would say that Joe Sixpack, who is a pro-life guy, who belongs to a union, wants to feed his family, wants to have the American dream, thinks it's just a home, little white picket fence and a dog, right? That the Democrat Party has abandoned Joe Sixpack.
I don't think they have. I think the Democrat Party is really, and it was what Debbie Wasserman Schultz said. She said that they were a big tent party. They really represent inclusiveness. I think it's just the Conservative Party that represents, you know, special sets of rights, special sets of tax laws, special sets of all these things.
Special sets of rights, because it seems to me that it's the Democrats that are representing special sets of rights. They want special rights if you are black. They want special rights if you're gay. They want special rights if you're, now we're getting into the whole transgender thing. They want a woman. You name it. There's all these special rights.
I don't think those are special.
It seems like the Republicans are more about just, you know, government, get out of our way, and we'll work it out person to person, mano a mano, more so than government micromanaging us.
I just think that what that means, though, is in reality is that conservatives are sort of, I don't want to say ignorant of history, but they ignore history, because it is women and gays and blacks and all kinds of groups that have been maligned by the government, treated differently in the first place. And what progressivism looks to do is to undo that.
So if the government has been the one to malign them, then why would you give that same government more power over those same groups of people.
Because we control the government. The government is just us. And
you
so
think so?
it's
you
just,
really feel that way today?
For example,
because it doesn't seem that way to
well,
me
the
today.
Civil Rights Act, for example, the government basically was saying, we did this, so now we're going to stop doing that to do this. It wasn't, the government was always the constant, but it went from doing the wrong thing to doing the right thing. And I think that's what progressivism has always been about. I mean, that's why it was a Democrat president that signed that into law. It was about moving forward. I think conservatives feel that, you know, things should be the way they've always been. That's kind of the definition of conservatism.
No, I think they think the Constitution should be the way it's always been. But I think that's where they draw the line. I think conservatives, I mean, the conservatives I know anyway, they think that, you know, they know that the world changes, for crying out loud. I mean, we had the Barbary pirates before, but we have serious terror with all kinds of technological ways to get to us now, besides a ship, you know. And so we really have terrorism looking us, you know, right down the barrel at us.
Are you talking about Dylan Roof? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
and so I think that we have to adjust to that. And I think that, you know, conservative politics, all politics, has made their stance on that in order to adjust to it. But it's not a matter of not knowing history. I think it's just a difference between sort of the gravity that conservatives place on on having an absolute right and wrong versus Democrats who I think maybe see that as just more malleable.
Maybe it's just that the morality is different, because I think that a Democrat looks at a woman being paid less, for example, or someone not being able to attain a job because they might have an ethnic sounding name as ridiculous, and they want to fix that. A conservative doesn't see that as an issue, but if you talk about gun control, they hear like, you're coming for my rifle, and then they freak out. So I think it might have to do with I don't know, the way that they see morality. They think gun control is a violation of the Second Amendment. We think that not having equal marriage is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. So I think it just has to do with the way that people look at
I think it has to do with the way that people look at the use of government. To me, they're there to do a couple things that are enumerated, right, in the Constitution. I'm a woman. I know I have been sexually harassed and sexually discriminated against.
Are you okay with that?
I feel like it is my battle, and I don't want the government coming in and classifying me a certain way and then thereby controlling me.
So do you not think that in those situations you should have had any kind of recourse, legal recourse?
Because that's what the government. Recourse. You always have legal recourse. You don't have to be a special cause. Even before gay marriage happened, gay people could still get married if they wanted to in a religious ceremony.
They wouldn't have the same rights. They wouldn't have the same rights.
They would have you and I have debated this. We don't have to.
Right, but if
they would have the same rights. I mean, it depends on. I think it depends on whose rules you're reading, and you and I read, I think, different people's rules, Jonathan. But I do think it has to do with the role of government and maybe even the trust of government. We conservatives do not trust government. It feels to me like liberals trust government, but I don't understand that when historically blacks, for example, have been so persecuted.
Kind of
it is ironic.
It's kind of ironic, but I think it's because they've seen how powerful the government is and how if you use it the right way, it can have a huge impact on people's lives.
And if you use it the wrong way, you become China. Thanks for being with us. More in just a moment. You stay put.